Colorado just suffered their biggest coaching loss of the Deion Sanders era.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Bohr, but today's episode is brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So thank you guys for making me your first listen of the day. Like I say every single day, make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. So that way you don't miss out on a moment of knowing what's happening with Colorado, because it feels like every single moment of every single day, something is happening with Colorado. Let's talk about it. Coach Prime just suffered what I think, or what I consider to be, the biggest loss of his coaching staff in his 2 years on the job, now soon to be 3, because obviously you lose Sean Lewis. I don't think it worked out how anyone planned. I think there was a whole offensive, I think the roster wasn't built for the Sean Lewis system, right? I think Colorado tried to go step 5 before building up the lines, which was step 1 through 4. And then you lose Charles Kelly, who, again, roster wasn't where it needed to be. I don't know if his system was compatible for what Colorado had at that time. So those guys, both big losses, I would say, but not the biggest. Phil Loadholt, I would say up until this point, was probably the biggest or most disappointing loss, simply because I would like to see some continuity on this Colorado offensive line, and I think partially that's why Deion Sanders turned to Gunnar White, because he's been with the program. He sort of knows the ins and outs. He knows the guys know him. So I think that's why he goes there. But this loss was huge, in my opinion. The Buffs lost Damian Lewis to Miami. It's not a shocking loss when you consider all the facts. He's going to go work with their defensive tackles. He played in Miami. He's played there for 5 seasons, had 15.5 sacks. Was drafted by the St. Louis Rams in 2001. Was a 10-year vet, played for the Rams, Panthers, Texans. But obviously, this was his lone year in Boulder, and I think we saw a major, major difference, right? Colorado goes from, quite frankly, having one of the worst defensive fronts in college football in 2023 to having a unit that gets 34 sacks, 79 tackles for a loss, both of which led the Big 12, right? You had guys like BJ Green, who was obviously an edge rusher, but he could play all over. And we saw some of the best football from Shane Cooks, Amari McNeil. These guys were really responding to what Lewis had to say. And I also think having Warren Sapp there also helped help develop the unit, if you will. But losing him after getting a guy like Jaheim Otis, I would have liked to see him work with Otis, right? Jaheim Otis is, I think, bigger than Caden Salter, bigger than Joseph Williams, bigger than Martavius French or whoever else. I think Jaheim Otis is the biggest addition that Colorado made in terms of impact, and I would have loved to see him work with Lewis. That being said, the good thing for Coach Prime in Colorado is you have an NFL legend, Pro Football Hall of Famer Warren Sapp, who was a quality control analyst this past year. Maybe he gets promoted, right? Or maybe they bring in another experienced coach to sort of headline the room, and that way Sapp can continue to develop that experience. But gosh, you hate to see the sort of promising coaches leave. Can't fault him, right? Anytime a coach gets a chance to coach at his alma mater, those guys usually take it. And I would say, quite frankly, Colorado, it's a good sign when you're losing assistants in a way, right? You don't want to ever lose assistants, but when you're losing them, and it's just one of those things where when you're losing assistants, I guess you could say it this way, it means you're doing something right? It means, hey, it means we're trending in the right direction. Whereas Colorado the year before, obviously not trending in the right direction in terms of win-losses, I guess you could say. But either way, I'm disappointed in the loss, right? I would have liked to see him stick around. Again, it's really hard for these guys to turn down their alma mater. But I was going to bring up the PFF grades for his unit because, I think a lot of people may have overlooked just how good Colorado's defensive line was this past year, right? I think they were kind of one of the main reasons that Colorado was having some success was, hey, we're creating penetration. We're creating disruption, and we're creating all of this in between. And so let me pull up the grades right here for you guys, because I think we'd be a little bit shocked to see the dramatic. So obviously, and I think this was like the biggest revelation for Colorado this year, Chidozie Nwankwo, right? You bring him in from Houston. He was already kind of proven, but 82 run defense grade. And I think he was one of the bigger revelations for Colorado. Shane Coke's 63 grade overall, 71.1 run defense grade. Really, I think Shane Coke's had leader aspects to him. It was his better of the two grades, or excuse me, during his 2 years at Colorado, he had a better run defense grade this past season, and he also had a better pass rush grade as well. His overall grade wasn't necessarily better, but his tackling grade in 2023 kind of skews it, so hard to tell there. But you get everything you wanted out of Chidozie Nwankwo. You kind of boost up Shane Coates' play. And then a guy like Amari McNeil, who transfers in from Tennessee, is kind of an afterthought, right? They bring in all these new players, and it's like, okay, Colorado's reloaded. Who's going to step up? And it's like, hey, we got Amari McNeil out here, right? He's gonna make an impact. He had a 69.5 pass rush grade. He had the highest pass rush grade of all the interior defensive linemen. Tafik Thomas played quite a few snaps, right? And I think you would have just liked to see guys like Quincy Wiggins, Torian Carter, and Quinn Barnes, see them with another year, more experience with him, right? And so tough loss for Colorado, big gain for Miami. I don't know if Coach Prime turns to Warren Sapp. I think that's kind of like the obvious choice right away because Warren Sapp is with the team. Obviously, he's best friends with Coach Prime. But huge loss for the Buffs. You guys comment below. Who would you replace him with, right? Do you go with Warren Sapp, which kind of feels like a safe but risky hire in the sense that he's never coached or he's never been the main coach for a defensive line or defensive tackles unit? Or do you go bring someone else in and sort of operate under the same system where it's like, hey, Lewis, or say it's me, Kevin, you're going to lead the defensive tackles and Warren Sapp's going to help out, right? Do you go with that, or do you just go, hey, Warren, we think you're ready for this? You guys comment below. Let me know what you think. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the NFL mock drafts. They're flying all over the place. And Colorado is doing okay, I think we could say. This episode of Locked on Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or you just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit my style and my budget. My favorite part, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for the larger items. Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and I found everything I need in no time. There's something for every style in every home, no matter your space or budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. Welcome back to Locked on Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage. It's NFL draft season, right? The Super Bowl is over. The Eagles slaughtered the Philadelphia Eagles slaughtered the Kansas City Chiefs, and now everyone's attention is fully on the NFL draft. And for Colorado, I think if I had to guess, I think they're going to see 6 guys drafted, maybe 7, and I would say anywhere in the 5 to 7 range, right? I think a lot of Colorado fans are very hopeful that they see more than that, and I think every team, like every fan base, is like, we're pumping out 10 pros this year, and it just doesn't work out that way, right? There's a lot of guys who are fringe guys who may go late or undrafted, so it's really dependent on what position they play. If they can fit another role, like Cameron Simon Craig will probably have to be playing some special teams. All the guys at the Shrine Bowl, Shiloh Sanders included, were getting special team snaps because it's like, hey, you need to find your way onto a roster and then worry about getting starting reps at safety or receiver, whatever it is. So let's dive into the latest NFL mock draft that I looked at. Chad Reuter NFL analyst for NFL.com. He released a 3-round mock, and he had 2 Colorado players going in the first 5 picks. The first one was Travis Hunter going number 2. He said despite Deshaun Watson's injury issues, the Browns passing a quarterback 2 and select a true 2-way star in Travis Hunter. He said, I expect the Heisman winner to focus on offense at the next level because of his ball skills and athleticism, both of which the Browns are lacking. And just imagine Hunter occasionally lining up opposite Denzel Ward. So clearly he views him more as a receiver. They have Cam Ward going number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans because the rumor is that they want a generational talent, and they view Cam Ward as a generational talent. It's sort of what the noise around the draft world. Next up, Shedeur Sanders at 3, going to the New York Giants. He says, as the son of Coach Prime, Sanders has lived in the spotlight his entire life. So I don't think the New York stage will be too big for him. That said, for the Giants to maximize their new quarterback's talents, they must improve the offense line and find more playmakers to team up with Malik Neighbors. I liked that. I don't. Any team that or any player that goes to the Browns, I'm automatically like, ooh, sorry. It's a tough scene, right? It's like, oh, your career is not over, but it's certainly not going to be what we had all hoped, because the Browns are just a wasteland for talented players to go and watch their careers die and fizzle out. That being said, I think Travis Hunter will succeed wherever he goes. I think he's just that kind of talent. Shedeur with the Giants. It's making sense, right? He had the cleats. He had the interaction with Brian Daboll the other day. He was playing catch with Malik Neighbors. I think it was in New York, right? When they were playing catch on the road. Or was that Cam Ward? I don't remember. Either way, there's been a lot of ties with him and the Giants. And I think it makes sense, right? He's a big personality. He gets to go to a big brand or a big market. And he did say that he plans on playing against Dallas in a few months. And so the Giants, remember when we did that exercise, were the only team that played at Dallas, because he said he was going to be playing when he was at the Shrine Bowl. He said he was going to be playing against the Cowboys at that very stadium, and only one team within the top, I think it was 7 picks I looked at, play against Dallas at their stadium. So Shedeur Sanders is clearly, I don't know if he's forcing his way to New York, but he's hinted, right? He's made it clear, like, hey, I wouldn't mind. And so I like that there. In terms of the rest of the second and third round, there was no Colorado players. So clearly guys like LeJohntay, Jimmy, Will Shepard, BJ Green, Shiloh Sanders, Cameron Smith-Craig, those guys are all rounds 4 through 7, or undrafted. I don't think that's an indictment on them. I think it's just like a, hey, you're undersized. Hey, you showed some issues here. Or like, hey, there's just a really deep class. It's a really deep class. Like, for instance, if you look at this running back class, this is the one class where it's like, hey, you could take a running back in whatever round you want, and you're probably getting a guy who could be a star, right? This running back class is loaded. I think you say the same thing. You could say the opposite about quarterbacks, right? It's either you get Shedeur or Cam Ward, or you're taking a chance on Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, or whoever else is sort of in the mix there, Jalen Milroe, whatever. Like you don't really know what you're getting these days in this class. And so I think even if those guys are still drafted at 4th through 7th, it's exciting for them. I think of those guys, if there was anyone who could sneak up, I would probably say BJ Green or LeJohntay. Maybe Will too. Will's got size, and size and speed is always a tough combo to turn down. I think the guys who may hear their names on the final day or not at all, probably Shiloh, Jimmy. Speed works in his favor though. It'll be interesting, right? There's a lot of things that need to unfold for us to really understand, like, hey, this is where so-and-so is going. So I liked this draft just because it kind of gave us an idea of like first 3 rounds. This is what people are thinking. I'll keep you guys updated and let you guys know if anything changes with those players and where they end up getting drafted. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Colorado's new 5-star target and why this could be the one that Coach Prime brings in this season. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. Appreciate you guys for tuning in every single day, making me your first listen of the day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you don't miss out on a moment of the coverage, because we got a lot of fun coming up. And I think this is the interesting part of the year because there's obviously not a lot happening on the field. But at the same time, there is always something. And as we know, I call it the Coach Prime 5-star of the year. Colorado, or even dating back to his days at Jackson State, really, counting from Travis Hunter on, Deion Sanders has landed at least one 5-star per class. It was Travis, it was Cormani, it was Jordan, it was Julian, right? And the trends tell us, like, skill position, 2 corners / receivers, 1 quarterback, 1 offensive lineman. So clearly the skill position guys are more prone to coming to play for Deion Sanders. Doesn't shock me, right? He's one of the best to ever play at corner. And then he also brings a lot of knowledge and has a lot of knowledgeable guys on offense and very willing to throw the ball. But Colorado's latest offer is really interesting to me because this is one that I think could be a program changer or a program maintainer, if you will, because at the college level, receiver is such an important position. In the NFL, it's not as important, right? We just saw the Eagles. The Eagles had good receivers, but I don't feel like they leaned on the receivers as much. They leaned on the running back a lot. They leaned on their physicality. Jalen Hurts was a running threat as well. So there's that. Another thing, the Chiefs made it to the Super Bowl with one of the weaker offensive or one of the weaker receiver cores. But you look at receivers in the playoff, right? Jeremiah Smith dominated. There was a wide receiver epidemic of talent, right? And so Colorado offers Chris Henry Jr., 6'5". Some people have him listed as 6'6", modern day guy, which is in LA. Ohio State commit. He's ranked at the number 5 player in the country, number 1 wide receiver, number 1 player in California. He has around 40 offers, and this is his scouting report from 24/7. Checks every box you want to see in a next level receiver. In fact, despite not playing in a premium position from an NFL draft standpoint, he's good enough to warrant consideration as a top overall recruit in the 2026 class, much like Jeremiah Smith was in 2024. Says close to 6'6", 195. Henry is one of the best, longest receivers in the 26 class, but has surprisingly agile and lateral quickness. He's explosive out of the gate, can stop and start on a dime, change direction, and has a huge catch radius. Dominant in jump balls, and once he fills out, he'll have some even more strength. So plays basketball, runs track, played some DB as well. So he's a guy that I think fits right into the mold of what Colorado wants. He's huge. They could use him both ways. They could pitch him as, hey, you could be the next Travis Hunter. I don't know how successful that pitch is going to be because I don't know if people want to be compared to Travis Hunter, especially at Colorado. But I do like that Colorado is getting aggressive here, right? This is hey, we have Julian Lewis. We have a talented quarterback. We need weapons around him. We got a couple, but we need a guy like you. We need a guy who's going to come in and be our best receiver. Because at the end of the day, when Coach Prime offers someone, specifically a high school recruit, he's offering them with the expectation that, like, you are going to play. You are going to have an impact right away. You look at what they did this past year. Michael Welch was seeing a lot of snaps at running back. Jordan Seaton was a starter at left tackle. It's just one of those things where he has never shied away from playing true freshmen. And I think if you're a guy like Chris Henry, you go to Ohio State, maybe you get lost in the fold. Who knows, right? Or if he's that guy, maybe he steps right in and is a star. And so that's obviously the hardest part is Ohio State has such a pedigree with receivers that anyone going up against them is kind of in a losing situation. But I like Coach Prime's aggressiveness here. I think Colorado could benefit from an elite talent. Obviously, most teams could, but you're selling the vision of Julian Lewis. You're selling the vision of, like, hey, our program is headed in the right direction, and we need another guy like you to really help see that vision through. So I really like the offer of Chris Henry. We'll see if it develops even more, right? The next steps for Colorado to really get in the mix is get him on for a visit, an unofficial, get him on for an official, sort of get another guy, another recruit to mingle with him, land another top tier recruit. So that way they could be like, hey, we're packaging you guys together. What do we think? I think it could be worth it, right? You got to take a swing like this if you're Colorado, especially now that you have some success to sell to these young men. So appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs, making me your first listen of the day. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow so that way you don't miss out on a moment of coverage. I appreciate all of you for tuning in, subscribing, following. Let's have some fun in the comments, and make sure you guys turn that notification sound on or turn notification ringer on so that way you don't miss out on another episode. Appreciate all of you, and I will see you tomorrow.